Hi there, everyone. Welcome to part two of our 12 things to do after you're admitted to an MBA program. As I mentioned last week in part one, these two episodes are for anybody who's been lucky enough to be heading to business school this fall. Two reminders, though, before we dive into the second part of this series. If you've received any scholarship money or are hoping to negotiate maybe to receive more merit aid, we covered that scenario in episode 281, so don't miss that. And number two, if you're in the enviable position of deciding between programs, meaning you've been accepted to more than one program, we cover ways to approach that scenario in episode 282. So check that out as well. So last week we focused on things that you should be doing, the first six things that you should be doing for those who know they're going back to business school. As a brief recap, those were thank your supporters, thoroughly wrap up your current job, ensure you take all your contacts with you, be prepared in case you are have any documents requested during a background check, get to know your future classmates both online and maybe during any local meetups of admits, and then, if possible, attend your admit weekend. This week, I'm going to dive into the other six to-dos, so let's jump right into it. Now we're at number seven. So number seven is very, very straightforward. It's to make sure you complete all of your required pre-matriculation work. Once you're accepted, you will start being bombarded with a ton of information from your program. Make sure nothing gets lost. Really take the time to review each item that comes in, as in read the fine print. This is not a time to skim. Take note of what you have to do, what the deadlines are. I'm talking things like your enrollment deposit, deadlines on housing, any other important things like that. It's easy for something to get overlooked or missed. And make sure, that you know what's required from your end. Submit everything that needs to be submitted on time because it would be a real shame to lose your spot because of a missed payment or registration deadline or something easily avoidable. Um, each school also usually has other pre-matriculation requirements that admitted applicants must complete. They could involve anything from an online platform, pre-selected courses you have to pass. This is another thing, if it's required of you, that it's just best to get out of the way as soon as possible. Number eight, it'll make the fact that you're going back to business school in the fall all the more real when you kind of sit down and do number eight, which is prioritize what you want to get out of business school, um, and figuring out how you're going to pay for it because there is no shortage of opportunities. You're not going to be able to do everything. And if you know where the majority of money is coming from that's going to fund your MBA, be it, personal savings or loans or scholarships or whatever, now is the time to think about maybe a monthly budget for your time as a student because, like I said, you need to prioritize what you really want to spend your money and time on because there's going to be no shortage of opportunities. And depending on where you live while you're at school, there will be expenses like rent, utilities, things you can count on every month. But there's also going to be things like shopping, eating out, going on a trip with classmates that it's hard to really fully understand before you go. But it's not too early to just make some guesstimates of what those things might cost and kind of plug some numbers in and plan. If you're hoping to get financial aid and you know that if a school was going to offer you anything, they probably would have done it at the time of your admit offer or very shortly after. So if your next best source of help with that is your school's financial aid office. Just remember, I mean, it's really not like undergrad. Like people aren't just handing out money to MBA candidates because, first off, the very nature of an MBA kind of represents, right or wrong, a stereotype that you are going to go on to make a lot of money. And so the nonprofit world, might have a few more options available for scholarships and awards, but the lack of kind of free money for MBA students is real. So just don't be surprised about it and plan for it. Other general rules of paying bills, in the real world just apply here too. You want to research when tuition payments are due and kind of make sure that you have your cash flow straightened out. if you are somebody who is going to attend business school in a different country from where you currently live or your home country, you want to know how you're going to kind of transfer money. Don't wait until the last minute to figure this out, given kind of international regulations and geopolitical stuff and exchange rates. All that can be more complicated than you might imagine. So again, like being prepared is the best way forward. I also mentioned, I mentioned students that might be studying outside their home country, but really everybody's going to have to move. If you're going to do a full-time MBA program, almost everybody's going to have to move, even if it's in your same city and you decide to, live on campus or whatever. So that's, something to plan for. Nine is, let me first address international students. You're going to have to start the visa application right away. Your school should be able to help you with this, but it can be very complicated. And I think it's no surprise that rules have been changing and there's kind of been general chaos in the United States, at least lately. So that's not something I am going to attempt to explain or go through here. It's just making sure that I'm passing along the urgency that you do not leave that till the last minute, but connect with your school as soon as possible and get help. This is another, topic where you just want to make sure you're reading all the emails thoroughly that the program sends, following instructions, and doing it quickly so that if something goes awry, you've given yourself a little buffer time before the end of the summer. And then for everybody, not just international students. Like I said, almost everybody's going to have to be moving and finding housing one way or the other. So this might vary greatly by school. Some have a lot of on-campus housing, some don't. Some have a lottery system, others have no on-campus options at all. So because that's so school specific, it's hard for me to provide any general advice except to say that, again, stay on top of it, make use of the student alumni network in cities where housing might be scarce or like expensive. Those who have done it before can be a big source of help and knowledge and insight. Another thing you need to think about is exactly when you're going to move, when you're going to leave your job, how much time you might need to allow yourself between then and when you move, whether or not you need to sell furniture, sell a car, buy a car, a lot of big decisions tied up with relocation. And many of them are expensive decisions. So this is another thing you want to get figured out in advance. So I've mentioned getting to know the people who deal with financial aid or immigration issues or housing, but another group of people that people tend to kind of forget about after admissions is over is the admissions team. And that brings us to number 10. So number 10 of the 12 things to do before you go back to get your MBA is to continue to build a relationship with the admissions team. This might be especially important if you come from a non-traditional MBA background. The admissions team, they're the ones that are going to have the insight into where you might want to spend your time beefing up your knowledge or skills in order to hit the ground running in the program. I think, unfortunately, that more people think about reaching out to the admissions committee if they're not admitted to get feedback and whatnot. But, they have much more of a reason to have a conversation with people that actually got accepted. They want to help you succeed. They want you to prove them right. Like, oh yeah, let the right people in. We selected the right people. So if you actually talk to them about your candidacy after you got in, you might find that they could have some really insightful advice about what maybe you could work on before the program begins, or maybe what types of electives you might want to take. They have their pulse on, hiring and the economy and like future trends. So use that source of information. Also, if English isn't your first language, they might have some suggestions for how you can more easily make the transition to an English speaking, country and program. While I'm mentioning admissions, I just feel like they're a group, not people, again, like people don't think of after they're in, but other groups like that are, like you can still talk to faculty, recruiters, alumni, students, recent grads who have a fresh memory of things and maybe things they struggled with or wish they would have known. They could pass along that wisdom. All right, number 11 involves getting yourself mentally ready for an MBA. So, what does that mean? This one might be more relevant or pressing, maybe for those who aren't coming from like consulting or financial services or things where a lot of or careers where a lot of, or companies where a lot of MBAs, uh, where an MBA is a common step in one's career journey. Um, I'm talking about doing things like, starting to follow or read business-centric news, like knowing what's going on in the economy and with major corporations that kind of, move markets in the United States and in the world, or who, make up headlines. Everybody could also benefit from reviewing course curriculums, making sure you kind of have the prerequisite knowledge to succeed. If you feel nervous about that, you can always take a few online classes. Nowadays you can actually find a lot of that, for free to prepare you. I am not going to pretend to know all of the various software and online apps and whatnot that I'm not going to pretend to know all of the software or, current online apps or everything that might be used in business school programs right now. But, in my day, it was Excel. And if people came from non-traditional backgrounds and they didn't know Excel, like they could very quickly get behind or lost. So we would have people do, we would recommend people do an Excel 101 tutorial. Back then, again, it was like Word, PowerPoint. Now it could be Google Docs, collaborative software. Figure out what the school uses and get yourself familiar with it, because it's just going to be such an overwhelming experience you don't want to be having to learn a new program like along with it. And if you're kind of shy, one other thing along these lines about getting mentally ready is if you're normally on the shy end of the personality spectrum, you are going to need to speak in front of, classmates who are all going to be brilliant. And coming from personal experience, it can be very, very intimidating. One thing I did was join Toastmasters. It's kind of like a public speaking club. They have them all over the world. I don't know if there's some other new thing that, has come since the olden days when I went to school, but doing what you can to kind of conquer the fear, which public speaking is the number one fear in the world, believe it or not. Anything you can do to get over that or conquer that and set yourself up again to for success in the classroom when you need to be speaking in front of your classmates and professors is just going to help. And then now we are here at number 12. The very last thing to do before you go back to business school is figure out how you're going to spend any other time you have between now and the start of your program, when you're not doing all the other things related to the other 11 to-dos that I talked about. Some people might take a break for a really long time. That could include travel, that could not. That is what I chose. I did like a 2 months of backpacking around Southeast Asia. I had the time of my life. I would recommend it to anybody that, has the means and time to pull that off. Other people might choose to keep working at their jobs and saving up as much money as they can so that they can spend the money when they, on things when they get to school. And there's going to be a lot of travel opportunities with your international classmates at school too. So other people might want to keep working, but not at their current jobs. Pre-MBA internships are a thing. So do your research if you want to maybe target a smaller firm than you have ever worked for, or a startup, or maybe the opposite. Maybe you want to work at some big conglomerate if you've only worked at startups. You you need to understand that you're currently you're now student status. Student status is the most magical, glorious thing in the world. Students can get away with so much more than just like a professional can, right? So, I mean, you could call up some dream place and just be like, hey, I'm going to be attending blah, blah, blah school in the fall. I would love, to do kind of like a pre-MBA internship. Do you have any program like that? And if you're willing to do it for free, I mean, that kind of thing can be priceless, because you can get in to a company, build a network, and maybe then end up coming back for a paid internship, or at least like, or even like figure out, I don't want to do that thing, or oh my gosh, I love this. I have to, this is confirmed that I want to switch my career to, this industry or this focus. So don't underestimate the power of now being a student and people opening up doors for you. So I hope no matter what you do, no matter how you choose to tackle your time kind of between now and school, that my wish for you is to carve some downtime for yourself. You're never going to get, like, I speak from so much truth and experience here. You are never going to get a time like this again. So take some downtime. You will need it. Being able to relax and like fully recharge before you enter this like non-stop phase of your life is really important. Think about how long you've been working on the application process and just realize that you deserve a break to let it all sink in, celebrate, turn your mind kind of maybe more off than it's ever been in your life because you're most likely a type A overachiever and that your mind will never be able to be off that long again, probably. So, like, take that time for yourself. Let the let the just excitement of all of this, sink in. I may not know you, but that does not mean I can't still be proud of you, and I am proud of you. So, that wraps up our two-part series on the 12 things you should do before starting your MBA. If you've been with us on the podcast for a while, I want to thank you for listening. Um, I still believe in good MBA karma. You've got 2 years to be in a program. So if you want to build up more MBA karma for yourself, pass along the word to business school now about B school now that you're not competing against anybody to get anywhere. Tell people in your company or friends you may know that are applying about this podcast or on your way out, give us a rating and earn that MBA karma for yourself. So I'm going to leave you today with a quote that I think is relevant for anybody about to start their MBA, but really applies to all of us, especially during these times. And it's an anonymous quote I found online that says, "It's exciting to think about, oops." It's an anonymous quote I found, and it's exciting to think that some of the best moments of our lives haven't even happened yet. And I hope you certainly have some of the best moments of your lives ahead at your business school program. That's all for this week. Bye.